Hello, my friends. Welcome to another excellent episode of Stand Up with Pete Dominick Daily. I've got the great Celeste Headlee joining me, and she does not disappoint. Brilliant and hilarious. We had an awesome conversation that begins at 23 minutes. But I do just want to make a little announcement here. I want to let everybody know that I am canceling my plans to go to swing states in these final couple of weeks of the election for several reasons. But anybody who gave me money, I will be sending that back to you. Almost everybody gave it through Venmo. I'll send that back. If you did not get your money back by the end of Monday, let me know and I'll be on it. No harm, no foul, and thank you. I'm so grateful to everybody who is supporting me on that. The entire idea came from Ben Wickler of Wisconsin, who is this really smart political strategist. I heard him on a podcast. He said the best thing you could do is go to swing states. I did it. I went to Nevada, and frankly, I just didn't feel like it was worth the effort that I made. I had all kinds of grandiose ideas, but I think the best thing that I can do is this work that I'm doing and doubling down on it. So I've got some plans of what I'm going to be doing each and every day here on the show and how we can help each other. But if I have one major weakness, fault in my work and my character, it's, well, like everybody, I have several, but I'm focused on over-promising and under-delivering. It was just too daunting, and I finally made the decision tonight to call it off, and I felt relieved, and I am very, very grateful to everybody who's supporting me. I just think that the most important thing that someone like me can do is the actual work that I do all day. If you are a nurse or an accountant or a teacher or business person of some sort, and it has nothing to do with politics, then certainly it makes sense. Or if you don't have a skill in your day job that can lend itself to helping people get elected, then of course it makes sense. But I really feel like the most work I can do is right here behind this microphone and making videos and clipping things up and on social media where I have a pretty large platform. So that's what I'm planning on doing each and every day between now and November 5th. Plus, I've just had a lot of personal stuff going on. It's made it very hard to get out of here. Not only responsibilities to my family, but several gigs for which you probably heard me talking about. And so there you go. That's the big announcement. I hope I haven't disappointed you or let anybody down. If I have, I'm sorry. I'm trying to role model the best behavior I can, and I hope that people are going out and doing whatever they can. There's still plenty of time left to make a difference, and I hope to do that. I just don't think me driving all over the place is the best time I could spend to make the most impact in these final days. Plus, it makes it harder for me to be here for you each and every day in all the ways. All right, let me know your thoughts on that on the Discord platform or email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. And any ideas that you think I'll be most effective and that you're doing from your home, I'd love to hear them. And I hope to see you at the Hangout this Thursday night to talk about it all. If you're not already a subscriber, sign up now and join us on the Discord platform and at the Hangout, and I hope to see you there. Also, shout out to Clark, who has just resubscribed to the show and said in a message to me, I'm resubscribing because of the sound clips. I usually know all the headlines, so I skip those, but the sound clips are the best. Today's were especially good on the show with Christian Finnegan. Thanks for all of the good work and hard work that you do. Clark, thank you very much. I rarely hear something specifically about the montage of audio I pull, but I think a lot about those clips. I don't just grab random things, and I get as much as I can for you from context from the day in terms of sound bites that you might have missed. So I really appreciate that very much, Clark. Welcome back. And now let's get to those headlines that apparently Clark loves to skip. Who else? Who else wants to admit that they skip the headlines? I really do need to put out a survey to see what you like and don't. But here's what I got for you from the weekend. More evidence this weekend from the disgraced former president that it's hard to believe this is the timeline that we are living in. This is what is happening in our world, where the disgraced former president and his few billionaire supporters are basically paying people now to vote. Elon Musk is giving $1 million away to a number of registered voters in Pennsylvania and other swing states to sign his PACs petition. Of course, Trump used to hate PACs, but now he loves them. And then Trump was talking about Arnold Palmer's dick and pretending to work at a McDonald's, which is weird that I'm saying those words out loud, but that's just a little bit of what happened in the wild, wild time that we are in right now. Scary. And hopefully it's starting to come to an end, maybe, when Kamala Harris wins on November 5th. But here are some more of the headlines from the weekend. President Biden met with top world leaders in Germany on Friday at a tenuous moment for Ukraine and the Middle East. Two ongoing and volatile wars that have marked Biden's time in office and that will define his foreign policy legacy, is the way it's written at the New York Times. And if you're looking for a little light reading, this came out. It's only 2,000 pages. A federal judge Friday ordered the release of a heavily redacted trove of evidence supporting the contention by federal prosecutors that the disgraced former president illegally sought to overturn the 2020 election. In ordering the release, the judge was rejecting objections by the disgraced former president's legal team that making even a largely blanked-out version of the material public now would constitute interference in the presidential election. So we may learn yet more in the next few days over what happened, especially Mike Pence. What did he tell them in his conversations that we haven't heard yet? Also, let's move on to the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average surged to even more highs on Friday, sealing 6 straight weeks of gains. The economy is on fire with Democrats at the helm. It's undeniable, but yet it's constantly being denied. But people don't feel that way. Obviously, some metrics aren't perfect, aren't great, but in the grand scheme of things, it ain't socialism, as they say. Another January 6th prison sentence. A Trump supporter who stormed the Capitol and assaulted law enforcement officers is now saying she was duped by the former president's lies about the 2020 election. Her name is Dana Jean Bell, and she was sentenced to 17 months in federal prison by U.S. District Judge on Thursday. You hate to see it. Thought this was interesting. A pre-election scramble. The Biden administration shelling out billions of dollars for clean energy, approving major offshore wind projects as officials race to secure major climate initiatives before President Joe Biden's first term comes to an end. Only term it would be, I guess. Let's go to the Korean Peninsula, where North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said South Korea is a foreign and hostile nation. State news agency reported Friday photos showing Kim Jong-un conferring with high-ranking soldiers and poring over a map labeled Seoul. At a command post, Kim discussed the use of offensive forces against South Korea as retaliation for any move that infringes on sovereignty of the North. More stagecraft from the volatile and terrible North Korean leader who Trump obviously loves. They're good friends. He wrote him love notes, remember? And this is some good news, public health news. After years of rising, the tide may be turning on deadly drug overdoses in the United States of America. Drug overdoses fell 12.7% in the 12 months ending in May, according to preliminary data released Wednesday by the Center for Disease Control. And this is the largest recorded reduction in overdose deaths, according to White House in a statement. And let's go back now to that notion that Elon Musk, that idea that he's giving randomly $1 million to people, somebody who signs his super PAC's conservative petition. A top law lawyer, Rick Hasson, says that Elon Musk is breaking the law by giving away $1 million to a number of registered voters in Pennsylvania and other swing states who signed the stupid petition. At a rally in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the cartoon villain billionaire Elon Musk announced his plans for the stupid $1 million a day up to the election to signers of petition. However, per the terms set out at the petition link, the giveaway is only open to registered voters in the 7 swing states. Can we not get a billionaire to do this for Kamala? U.S. law professor Rick Hasson, in a post on Election Law Blog, argued because registering to vote is a required provision for eligibility, Musk is breaking the law with his gambit. You can read all about it at the Wall Street Journal and plenty of other outlets. Also, 14 million people have already voted, and they are mostly registered Democrats. So that, I think, is a really good sign, although still hard to read these tea leaves. And what else do I have for you in headlines? Boeing's largest union, which represents more than 30,000 workers, said it had reached a deal to end its strike and would put it to a vote. So I think that's good news. And those are your headlines. I'm not doing the Middle East and Ukraine. There's a bunch of headlines there, but just unable to cover them on today's news update. I do want to get to those sound clips. There's, of course, a lot going on because of the weekend, the Sunday shows, and I've got some comedy for you coming up. But here you go, Clark. It's time for Clark's Clips. Let's start with President Obama. He's always great on the stump. He was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and he is letting loose. Love it.
Yeah, it was good because it was my economy. Some of y'all remember what it was like in Nevada when I came into office. The worst financial crisis in history. The housing market collapsed here in Nevada. You remember that? Boarded up homes everywhere. Folks' mortgages underwater. I spent 8 years cleaning up that mess that the Republicans had left me. And then I handed over to Donald Trump 75 straight months of job growth. And all he did with it was give a tax cut to the people who didn't need it, drove up the deficit in the process, and now he wants to do it all over again. So, if you're talking to somebody, and y'all know somebody who's all like, well, I don't know, I remember Trump, the economy that was pretty good. You remind them it wasn't good because of anything he did.
Yeah, I love it. Love Obama on the stump, just unleashing on Donald Trump. I wish he would have done that more. I realize why he didn't, but I love it now. All right, and here's Tim Walz. This is pretty funny. I think it's self-explanatory. He's in Nebraska trying to win that one district.
I saw Donald Trump's mic went bad in Detroit. You do not want me dancing for 20 minutes like this dude. Somebody on his staff should explain the YMCA song to him, too, just so they know.
All right, I thought that was pretty funny. I wanted to share that one with you. Here's Kamala Harris. She is in Georgia over the weekend.
And now he's ducking debates and canceling interviews because of exhaustion. And when he does answer a question or speak at a rally, have you noticed he tends to go off script and ramble? And generally, for the life of him, cannot finish a thought. And he has called it the weave. But I think we here will call it nonsense.
Yeah. Love it from Kamala Harris over the weekend. Let's go back to President Obama, shall we? Check in with him in Nevada.
And in the White House, she will have an outstanding partner in Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. I love that guy. Tim's a veteran. He's a teacher. He is a football coach. He's a hunter. Been a great governor. Working with Democrats and Republicans to get stuff done. And I just found out he can take vintage trucks apart and put them back together again. Now imagine that. You think Donald Trump can do that? Do you think Donald Trump's ever changed a tire in his life? Huh. You know, if he gets a flat tire, he calls Jeeves. Jeeves, change that tire. The point is, if you elect Kamala and Tim, they won't be focused on their problems. They're going to be focused on your problems.
All right, now let's go to one of the senators from Georgia there. It was Senator John Ossoff, who was also real good on the stump for 2 minutes.
And don't just take my word for it. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, He served for years as our nation's most senior military officer under Donald Trump. He said Donald Trump is, quote, the most dangerous person ever. He said Donald Trump is, quote, a fascist to his core. Think about that for a second. This is the man who led the United States Armed Forces under Donald Trump. You should hear what Republican senators say about Donald Trump when the microphones are off. See, there are a lot of elected Republicans who know the man is unfit for the presidency. But no matter what he says or does, even after he tried to force them to break the law and overturn an election, even after he raised a mob that assaulted the police and sacked the U.S. Capitol, even after his lies about the election put at risk the lives of election officials in Georgia and across the country, mostly they just fall in line. These elected officials in his own party will not restrain him if he is returned to power. It's up to us. It's up to us to turn the page on Donald Trump once and for all, Georgia.
And now here is Kamala Harris, billionaire supporter. It's Mark Cuban who actually advocates for policies that aren't always in his own interests because he cares about the betterment of everybody. I'm going to say that in general. I don't want to say too many great things about Mark Cuban, but he's helping Kamala Harris get elected. I actually met him before. He was really nice to me, but on a one-to-one basis, a lot of these guys are nice. Nonetheless, here he is. I thought this was interesting for 2 minutes, so I wanted to share it with you.
Just think about it from a retail perspective. We buy clothes, we buy sneakers, we buy books, we buy backpacks, we buy all the sporting goods. Just think about this time next year for Christmas, for your own personal Christmas gifts. If all of a sudden, God help us, Donald Trump is elected and he puts 60% tariffs on everything from China. Now all those things cost more because that distributor, that retailer can't eat all that. Now you're having a second conversation about Christmas, aren't you? Honey, I don't know if we can get that. Now, from a small business perspective, who suffers? The person who's selling. The person you buy at the bookstore, the clothing store down the street that you've gotten all your stuff from. The sporting goods shop that gets you all the merch for your kids' stuff. Right? Those are the people who suffer. So when Donald Trump talks about tariffs, and he's thinking, oh, you're going to, if we put this big tariff on, all these big companies are going to move their manufacturing from wherever to the United States. How many of you own manufacturing plants in other countries? One guy, right? Good for you, right? Good for you. Okay, 99.9999% of you don't. But you get my point. It's your families that are suffering. It's the local retailers that are suffering. Even the bigger retailers will suffer. He doesn't care. He probably doesn't even understand. Donald Trump is the Grinch that's trying to steal your Christmas. As a retailer, because, 3/4 of your business, or at least a quarter of your business comes in the end of the year, the final quarter. And if you're selling to small businesses, and if you're a restaurant, people having more or less money, honey, are we going to go out to eat? Are we going to order in? Or are we going to use that money for presents? That's what tariffs do. It is not about big companies. It's about small companies. Do you think he's paid any attention to that? Have you heard anybody in the mainstream media talk about any of this? That's why I'm here.
All right, there you go, Mark Cuban yesterday. And you know what? I'm not playing Donald Trump talking about Arnold Palmer's dick or any of the things that he said. He said all kinds of crazy things over the weekend. I'm just going to bring you some laughs right now. We need some laughs. How about let's go to Michael Che and Colin Jost from Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, which was live Saturday night, and another great episode.
Well, the election is just 16 days away, and the candidates are striking very different tones trying to get out the vote. For example, here's Kamala Harris.
Your vote is your voice, and your voice is your power.
Nice. And here's Trump.
Get that fat pig off the couch. Tell him to go and vote for Trump. He's going to save our country.
Also nice. Direct. Subtle differences you'll notice in their styles. Like here's Kamala's message to women.
And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom, I will proudly sign it into law.
Okay. And here's Trump's closing message to women.
So amazed that Harvey Weinstein got schlonged. He got hit as hard as you can get hit.
So in that story, he thinks Harvey Weinstein's the one who got schlonged. By the way, I never need to hear anyone ever say schlonged again.
Donald Trump appeared at a town hall hosted by Univision where he was asked questions in both English and Spanish, which he answered in both English and louder English. During a rally in Atlanta, Donald Trump said that any black person who votes for Kamala Harris should have their head examined, but no matter who we vote for, I promise you, I am not going to therapy. That guy gets me.
At an all-female Fox News town hall, Trump declared himself the father of IVF, which stands for Ivanka and various freaks. Trump also appeared on Fox and Friends and said that Abraham Lincoln was probably a great president, but wanted to know why the Civil War wasn't settled. Well, it was settled until you showed up.
Insiders say that during a campaign stop in Pennsylvania tomorrow, Donald Trump will work the fry cooker at a McDonald's where he plans to deep fry the tip of his tie. Kamala Harris responded to Trump calling January 6th a day of love, saying that he is gaslighting us. But Kamala, you're just imagining things, baby. That's called gaslighting, Colin.
Yeah, that seemed very real.
I'm a good actor.
At a rally in a Pennsylvania high school, Elon Musk promoted the debunked theory that Dominion voting systems rigged the 2020 election, saying, quote, "The last thing I would do is trust a computer program." Like the ones driving all of his cars. President Biden also said that he hopes that the death of the leader of Hamas will be a path to peace in Gaza. Path to Peace is also the name of the home Biden's moving into in about 3 months.
The Archdiocese of Los Angeles has reached a settlement in hundreds of child sex abuse cases and will pay out $880 million, an amount that priests called worth it.
Yeah, and playing that last joke was worth it. There you go. I love that. Was that too long, Clark? Was it too long of a clip? Did I take too much of the excerpts from the Weekend Update? That's all I've got for you. The headlines, the clips. I'm sure I missed plenty. Always want to hear from you. standupwithpete@gmail.com with any ideas that you've got for headlines or clips. Okay, now it's time to get to my conversation with Celeste Headlee. She is simply one of my favorite people to talk to. And this was a great conversation. We had a lot of really good laughs as well. And she touted Detroit for like 8 minutes, but we talked about why diversity is important as well here. At the top, I admitted to being an ageist, and she's just smart, funny, thoughtful. I always learn a lot, and I was very happy to have her perspective on the show. Go support Celeste. Hire Celeste to speak to your company or organization about why diversity matters. Get all of her books, including Do Nothing, How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving. We Need to Talk, How to Have Conversations That Matter. And speaking of race, why everybody needs to talk about racism and how to do it. Follow her on social media. Support her now on Blue Sky. Let's do it with Celeste Headlee. Celeste Headlee, I'm so happy to have you back. I feel terrible this week. I've had all men on the show. I'm very cognizant of gender. I try not to beat myself up too much because I'm booking the show and I book who's available and who I know and so on. But I wanted to ask you about, when it comes to journalism and talking about issues, why gender matters in terms of a diversity of voices. Because this week I did a real sausage party on these listeners of mine. Maybe you don't.
Yeah, some of it is blind spots. It is 100% natural that all of us are more likely to notice things that relate to our own expertise and our own experience. So that's why you always want to have a diversity of people from all kinds of backgrounds, because they're going to notice stuff you don't notice. So CYA, like I always tell CEOs, if what you're trying to do is protect yourself, you need the most diverse workforce you can, because those are going to be the people going, wait, you missed this one thing, right? Another thing is that we know through sociological research that the people who are the most accurate in terms of identifying trends, identifying bias, are those who have the least power. So it's actually backed up by some strong clinical peer-reviewed evidence that the group that is the most accurate at identifying bias trends in society are Black women. So again, it's just about making sure that you're bringing people on who are opening you up to new experiences and making sure you're covering all your bases. Also, when you surround yourself with people who have the same experiences as you, can lead to cognitive decline. So you want to always make sure you're reaching out to people who disagree, who have different perspectives.
I love it. I love it. You are the expert on this anytime it comes to diversity, for sure. I wonder why that is about Black women. And they have blind spots too. They might not know about something.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not even going to.
Yeah, everybody does.
I'm trying to think of a blind spot for Black women, but I'll let you do it. I was going to say some kind of deer hunting activity.
Everybody has blind spots. Everyone does. There's so many different biases. We haven't had a president who's under 6 feet tall since the 19th century. People who are overweight are discriminated against all the time. The most common discrimination is against people who are older. We all have blind spots. And that's why we need to rely on each other. We really need each other to help us point them out, because we all miss stuff.
That's definitely my, I'll call it even worse, a bias. The elderly. I'm ageist.
Yeah, it's the most common. When I send people, a lot of times through our trainings, one of the first things we do is have people go take an IAT test, an implicit association test through Harvard. And I always tell them, if you've never taken one, do the age one first, because everyone's biased against the age. I'm not in any way, shape, or form excusing it. This is not me saying it's right or whatever. I'm just saying it's really common. Even those who are older have discrimination against older people, but it also tends to threaten people's identity less. If they go and take a racism one and they find out they're racist, or a sexism one, that can be very upsetting. But for some reason, people are less threatened by finding out that they discriminate by age.
I have another question for you. But first of all, is that test available for anybody to take? Can I link to it or something?
Absolutely. If you just go to Harvard Implicit Association Test, you can find a whole slew of them. And I think it's like implicit.harvard.edu, I think. And you agree to the terms because you're taking a scientific test. And then there's all kinds of different ones. You can test your bias based on religion, based on transgender, disability, weight, all kinds of different ones. So I highly recommend it, especially because it can be actually encouraging. It doesn't have to be depressing. I found that my opinion on the transgender community has absolutely improved over time. I'm now biased in favor of transgender people. When I was in high school, I was transphobic. I had no idea what I was talking about, and I was an idiot. But that's turned around. So it can also help you over time see how those biases can change.
I have another question around gender for you, just an observation I made, and I wonder if it can easily be debunked right away. But I was watching Elon Musk. I know you've got plenty to say about him and how he's run Twitter and seemingly run you off and others as well, because we learned some really important news this week about how he's tweaking it, which we already knew, towards Trump. But I watch him, and it's so cringe to watch him and Trump because they're super wealthy guys who cannot get enough attention in all the ways. They want it constant. And I just started thinking about that doesn't have necessarily a gender bias per se, but there are, plenty of women of all ages thirsty for attention on social media and trying to sell everything they can. Nothing wrong with that gender-wise. Everybody's trying to get attention, fine. But what I don't see are really wealthy billionaire women or very wealthy women, however they earned or came into money, either way, no matter what, being so thirsty for constant attention that they would do these cringeworthy things to get it. It's so rough to watch. And I just thought about that. I was like, I don't see any really wealthy women constantly on social media begging. And that maybe I'm not seeing it, but I wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
There is a difference between public attention to men and women, right? Public attention on women usually turns nasty pretty quickly. It becomes sexualized very quickly. I can't even tell you when I post an opinion online that people don't like, you can do a countdown before someone calls me a whore or a bitch or whatever. And then you start getting threatened with rape and all this kind of thing. So I'm not saying that people don't say nasty things about Elon Musk or Donald Trump. I'm just saying that a lot of times the public attention can go bad very quickly for women.
Oh yeah.
And it's bad in a gendered way.
That's true.
Yeah. I would imagine I like attention in small doses. Like I get sick. I don't know if you have this too, but I get sick of hearing myself super fast. Like when I'm on a book tour, about a week and a half in, I'm like, I'm tired of myself. That's enough of me. I'm sick of hearing myself talk.
I definitely feel that way, and it's different in the different formats. But for me here on the podcast, at least, the whole scam is you talk way more. The guest is doing most of the talking, and I'm trying to come up with the best questions ahead of time and in the moment, because I love, in this case, listening to your thoughts, especially on that last question. And it's, do you know what I get when people try to attack me? I mean, you can assume it. I'll just tell you. What men get and what someone like me gets with my sensibilities and values is you're gay or you're not, the kind of masculinity that I value, whatever they call you, like a beta and a cuck. I put it in my bio on Twitter that I'm a beta. But
yeah, which is also gendered, right? Essentially what they're saying is you're acting like a woman.
Right, but it's interesting because what you say, the worst case scenario, a lot of women get rape threats and sexual violence threats and so on. I think that's the worst. I've had people tell me to kill myself. That's pretty bad. But the difference is I'm not put down. It doesn't even feel like a put down if you say that I'm gay or that I'm not that kind of masculinity. I don't feel in any way, and it's just a bizarre point to be making or argument or insult, quote, insult in 2024 to someone with my sensibilities, which is a lot of people, even my age. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. I hesitate to quote Louis C.K. knowing how problematic he is, but there was one routine he did where he said, I'll tell you how much power white men have. You can't even hurt my feelings. Right? Like, how are you going to hurt my feelings? But I think about that. That occupies more space in my brain than I would want to think about. It came up recently because Donald Trump was insulting Detroit. He was warning that if Kamala Harris becomes president, then the whole country will become Detroit. And I'm like, don't threaten me with a good time. Are you kidding me? Detroit is the best.
Yeah, you
absolutely.
You came strongly.
I'll take it.
You came strongly to the defense of Detroit. And I love Detroit and have a lot of roots there. And I've spent a good bit of time there. Not a lot, but I did think it was a little bit that you said it was your favorite city. And I would ask you to make the defense for it.
It is my favorite city in the world.
Make the case. I have a hard time with this. Detroit's a great city, but best city, Celeste? The
best city. No, seriously, Pete, we could spend the whole rest of the time just talking about this.
Just give me one
thing.
So
when I moved to Detroit, I'm a California girl. I'm born in Whittier, which is part of LA, for those who don't know California, and raised around there. And I had a lot of prejudices about Detroit when I was moving there. Mm-hmm. Everyone is, oh God, you're going to get murdered, et cetera, et cetera. But I got to tell you.
Were you murdered?
I was not murdered. In fact, the only place where I've ever even had a car break in was in Flagstaff, Arizona.
That's such a great, yeah, go ahead.
And I've lived in New York and DC, and my car got keyed in Compton, I will say that. But in any case, Detroit is very diverse. They have a massive, they're right next to Dearborn, right? So you just have to drive a little ways and get some of the best Middle Eastern food you've had outside of the actual Middle East. They have a huge Hispanic community, which is called Mexican Town. That's what it was called. There's Corktown, which is where all the Irish immigrants settled. Hamtramck, which is all surrounded by Detroit, was where all the Polish people settled. And you go there on Punchki Day and get a punchek. And they also have some of the most incredible culture ever. They have the largest free jazz festival in the world, the largest free electronic music festival in the world, the largest free country music festival in the world.
Wow.
And those are just the big ones as opposed to all the small music festivals that go on around. Detroit is green. Like, people do not realize how green Detroit is. It sits right across the river from Canada. So you look across the river, you can go through the tunnel and have your dim sum in Windsor, which I highly recommend. Excellent dim sum.
And if you're underage,
and they have,
you can drink.
Absolutely. And weed is legal there. They have the oldest still operating bowling alley in the country, the oldest still operating aquarium in the country. They have these massive river walk that you can walk from downtown all the way up to Belle Isle, which is where the sturgeon spawn and the aquarium is. And there's a herd of deer that live on Belle Isle. There's parks everywhere. It has all these amenities. The Detroit Institute of Arts has the 6th best art collection in the world, which I can explain how that happened if you're interested, but they have all these incredible amenities. The Detroit Zoo is so good that zoos from around the world send their endangered species there so that Detroit can care for them.
Oh,
and
that's got to be
them.
fake news.
That is not fake news. And in addition to that, you have these incredible amenities, but it's this Midwestern niceness. When you lose your job, people you haven't seen for months show up at your door with casserole. Like, they're calling you on the phone and saying, "Are you okay? What do you need? How can I help you?" They will grumble about it, but they will help you move. They will come and move rocks out of your back.
All right, now you're
backyard.
getting carried away. I know people in Syracuse who will help you move. That is not exclusive to Detroit, but I will say this. I'm going to need you to just say, "I'm Celeste Headlee, and I approve of this message. Detroit is the best city in America," because I'm sending this whole clip to the Detroit Tourism Board or Chamber of Commerce.
I am Celeste Headlee. I approve of this message. I came up with this message. Detroit is the best city in the whole world.
There you go. That is going to really make a lot of people in Detroit and Michigan, a lot of people proud of Detroit.
Have you ever been to Greenfield Village?
I think so. Look it
So
up.
for people who don't know Greenfield Village, Henry Ford, not endorsing Henry Ford. Henry Ford was super obsessed with history and incredibly rich. And so he went around the United States and bought historic buildings and moved them to Detroit, just outside Detroit. So the house where Webster wrote the first dictionary, a courtroom where Abraham Lincoln argued cases, the bicycle shop where they made the first working airplane, part of Edison's Mendel lab. These buildings were moved whole cloth, and they're sitting on this massive hundreds and hundreds of acres of land. Next to it is the Henry Ford Museum, where again, money does a lot of stuff. They've got the bus where Rosa Parks refused to sit down, the chair that Abraham Lincoln was sitting in when he was shot, and the blood stain is still there. Like, you literally just rent a room in the hotel across the street and just spend 3 or 4 days there.
Wow, I'm looking at it now. Greenfield Village Museum. That's very interesting, huh? Wow. So
anyhow,
we brought it up because Trump said Detroit, while he was in Detroit, he trashed Detroit. I think that we've talked a lot about how over the entire time Trump's been on the scene, he's been flooding the zone with shit. And that's the strategy. And he says and does crazy things, and we don't know which one to follow. When it comes to journalism and resources and how much time you spend on a thing, I want to go to you to see, what do you think was the most important or impactful thing that he said or did? And I feel like you were covering this, and you did it in a thread on Twitter about his comments about eugenics. And I think, to me, that was probably the most important. You could all argue that saying that you could use the National Guard and maybe even the Army to attack the enemy within, it's just people who disagree with him, that was a pretty big story too. But in terms, I wanted to get your take, because I know you were writing about that. How big of a deal was what he said? Why does it matter? The history behind it, and how specifically should we have been giving weight to that maybe, or something else?
It's extremely important. People need to understand that some of the world's best historians of the Holocaust, for example, they're not mentioning Hitler or Nazis as a gotcha. This isn't some kind of casual mention. Some of the most distinguished scholars in this field are saying that Trump is not alluding to Nazi philosophy. He's literally using the same words. He is literally repeating the exact same language that was used by the Nazi Party in Germany to stir up hatred against the Jews and therefore get people to participate in attempted genocide. Sounds like I'm trying to be political here. I'm not. I'm literally just being historical. And if you don't believe me, you can go straight back to these scholars who, again, are not politicians or pundits. They are historians. So the idea of eugenics, and this goes back to Donald Trump saying that you can tell if an immigrant is a murderer by their blood and that they have bad blood. This is not an idle comment. This is not, and it wasn't just the Nazis who did this. We've seen this throughout history, this exact same kind of language used again and again to justify the wholesale slaughter, sometimes vicious torture of other people. And it's a way to dehumanize people. For Homo sapiens, for our species, once you dehumanize someone, we make them less than human. That's how we are able to carry out atrocities. That's how we get ourselves past it, because they are not of our tribe, right? They're not one of us. Right. And that's what this does. And it's pretty recent, Pete. It has not been that long since scientific eugenics was accepted as a field of study. Right. It has been 100% debunked. It is bullshit. But very recently, people were taking it seriously.
Yeah, just this one quote from one science journalist writer, Daniel Vergano, says about Trump's racist rants about immigrants that it hides under the language of eugenics. He says anti-immigrant rhetoric in the U.S. comes straight out of the playbook of eugenics, deeply dishonest scientism that falsely claims that criminality, poverty, and a host of other ills are genetically inherited. Sometimes when he's riffing and improving about these immigrants coming over, he'll just think of a bad thing and attribute it to them. You know what? They're going to bring in a lot more sleet and hail, the kind of precipitation you don't like. They're connected to that. They're going to bring in peanut allergies. Like anything that bothers you or that you don't like or that you're scared of, he's going to connect them to without ever even thinking about it. Like off the cuff. It's real bad, and there's a history of it, is the better point.
Yeah, it starts with saying things like they're taking your jobs, which you have to slow down and pick that apart, right? Yeah. Who is they? Yeah. How do you know who they are?
Which jobs?
And how are they different from us, right? That's how it starts. That's pretty light. But I remember that one of the pieces that I posted came from Politico, actually, which is surprising to me. Politico hasn't been the best at really calling out how extreme some of this behavior has been. But in this article, they quoted a scholar named Robert Jones who studies religion. And he said, what is so jarring to me is these are not Nazi-like statements. These are not accidental or coincidental references. We have clear 20th century historical precedent with this kind of political language, and we see where it leads.
Robbie P. Jones, he's on the show quite a bit. That's a really important quote. And for him to be saying that, he said a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's real bad. Yeah, real bad.
Yeah.
The way that he's been talking and behaving as well. You also, I feel like this week he had this town hall with the Univision, which was actually, we learned something, I felt like, from that town hall to some extent, in that he shouldn't have gone there. I think it was terrible for him, but I wonder about what you thought if you watched any of that or heard any of the questions that came out of that or anything else that he's been saying about immigration and immigration policy.
I think that there's a number of things. Immigration policy, for me, it was more of what we've heard before. He's been calling immigrants scum, but he had that incoherent answer to the question on climate. He said, wasn't that where he said that the January 6th was a day of love? Wasn't that on the Univision interview?
Yeah, he said it to the guy who said, my opinion of you basically hinges on your apology for that day. Phrasing, obviously.
And it said it was a day of love. And frankly, Kamala Harris has been pointing to that. I feel as though Kamala Harris has been really drilling down on some of his extreme statements in a way to force media to cover them. I don't know if that's intentional, but that's what's happening, which is good. It just reminded me of what a terrible decision it was for Donald Trump to do that interview in front of the National Black Journalists Association and then complain that the interviewer was so mean. It's so predictable that he would claim there was bias against him.
She was nasty.
Yeah.
He would only say he only uses that word about women exclusively. He would.
He
I don't
does.
Know. I'd like
it's
to
a
find
very gendered insult. Yeah.
find him saying it to a man. But yeah, it was all of that and more.
And he dug down deeper on his ridiculous claims on Haitian migrants.
I haven't talked to you since that horrific thing has happened over and over. I don't know what is. I know you need a moment. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Thinking about it is so upsetting and emotionally exhausting and scary, real scary. And so doubling down on that, given the time that's passed, the fact checks, including from the people closest to the issues, law enforcement, the mayors of those towns, and so on. What do you think
the
about
residents, the business owners,
the damage?
Yeah. Okay, so a couple things here. A, the world has treated Haiti so badly. They have ruined that country. We outsiders have ruined Haiti and punished them for it. That the fact that we are now heaping criticism on them and putting them in danger when they've come to the U.S. to help us out is so far beyond to me. Haiti deserves so much better for the United States, which has just completely wrecked that country. So badly so that after the Haitian Revolution, France demanded that Haiti pay, after they threw the French out of Haiti, slave owners, demanded that Haiti pay them millions, hundreds of $millions in reparations for the loss of their property. The property being Haitians.
Yeah.
And that was going on they didn't enter the 20th century and then become enlightened. Haiti was still having to pay reparations, crushing reparations. The U.S., I can't even go into all the U.S. policies that have absolutely destabilized and thrown Haiti into poverty. So the fact that a U.S. city reached out to Haitians and said, we need help. We need your hard work and your work ethic. And Haitians answered and moved their whole families there to this town in Ohio. And then suddenly they're the target of violence and hatred. Their children are losing days at school and being threatened. Their cars are damaged. Their rocks are thrown through their homes. It's just unbelievable to me. And just to connect it back to Detroit in history again and again, when Black people are asking for control of their own lives or their own companies or their own schools or their own country, there is volumes of historical record of white people saying, if Black people take over, this is going to fail. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be awful. And then, of course, the powers that be go and put in policies and start taking actions to ensure that they fail. That happened in Detroit. It has happened in Haiti. It's happened in Black neighborhoods and Black schools all over the place. Yeah. That is exactly what has happened with Haiti. So to try to pretend like the chaos that is happening in Haiti is the fault of the Haitians is just so ridiculous to me. Anyone who is showing any kind of hatred toward the Haitian migrants should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, you know me well enough to know, Pete, that I do not say that lightly. But if you have said a horrible thing about a Haitian migrant in Ohio and it's not somebody that's pushed you off the sidewalk or something, you should be ashamed of yourself.
And even if they did push you off the sidewalk, was it because they were Haitian or because you were being a dick?
Exactly.
Like you're
going.
Maybe
they're a dick. Let's take race out of it. Anyone can be a dick, but it's not because they're Haitian.
I always try to correct myself with that too, with gender and even sexual orientation, much less race. I'm not going to attribute that to any of those immutable characters. I mean, like everybody can be a dick. You're just being a dick. I don't care. Stop yelling at me on the subway.
There's that great moment in King of the Hill where his Laotian neighbors move in and he doesn't like the guy. They don't get along. And everyone keeps saying, you can't say that. That's racist. And he's, what are we coming to? And you can't dislike someone for who they are instead of their race. You can't just hate somebody.
My dad, along these lines, my favorite quote of my dad's when we were talking, I corrected him on something. I think he said cotton picking. I go, Dad, we're not doing that anymore. And so he goes, listen, son, he goes, I don't love political correctness or having my language police. I'm an old man, but I don't want to ever hurt somebody's feelings. I don't want to put somebody down. So I'll do whatever it takes. I'll follow all the rules as long as you don't take the word asshole from me. Can I keep that? I go, Dad, it's yours forever. Everybody's got one. And can't be one. So
fair enough, Dad.
I love what you said about all of that, the comments and the danger it's actually posed, and your admonishment is duly noted. So let's just talk about her and just the media and journalism around the coverage of Kamala Harris, as well as her political strategy, and see what you're seeing and what you're hearing. I just want to go back, and I think I've said this to you before. It still seems like the primary issue that's getting the most attention, and should, sometimes it shouldn't, is women's reproductive rights. And I think a lot about the day after Trump was inaugurated. I was in D.C. at the Women's March covering it, and we couldn't move. You couldn't move. There were millions of angry women in the streets those days. And I don't know if they forgot or it subsided, but when Biden became presidency, if people got comfortable, but as soon as the Supreme Court took away half of Americans' rights in some states, right? I feel like that woke those and more women up. So I still feel like the story is about that issue, women being motivated to vote. And there's increasingly a lot of evidence, even with, say, white men who have daughters, who are changing on that opinion. But focused on that and how much that still animates the electorate is my question to you, because that seems to have always been, or has been the story, in my opinion, since 2017. And we woke up and elected a rapist.
Yeah, a convicted rapist.
Now.
And the support for reproductive rights has only risen since Dobbs. I'm sure people also know that the number of abortions has risen since Dobbs, not fallen. But we always know that. Anyone who is paying attention knows that bans on abortion or restrictions on abortion don't reduce the number of abortions. We know that. So there is broad support for abortion rights. And as you say, even among white men. It's funny because a lot of people think, understandably, but they think that we shouldn't couch rights for women in terms of, what if this was your wife? What if this is your daughter? I know, and I get that. I get the argument that you should care about people's rights and their suffering, regardless of whether you are married or they're connected to you. But I'm going to push back on that just a little bit, because when you study what works in terms of opening people's minds to the suffering of other people, increasing their empathy, connecting them to themselves, having them imagine that this is their niece, daughter, wife, is opening that door. That is helping them connect it to them as a person, as opposed to an intangible, vague idea. So I think it's totally okay to say, what if this were your wife? So that people can make that personal connection. And if you're watching the same stuff I am on social media, I am seeing white men especially, but men in general, posting videos that I would have expected a couple years back to only have come from women. I am seeing men posting videos with vocal, athletic support for reproductive rights and pushing back on other men to say, hey, you posted this, you're wrong, and here's why it's wrong. I just saw a post from an older, he looked like he may have been in his 60s, white dude in the South, saying, I'm a one-issue voter this time, and I'll be voting for Kamala Harris, and here's why. I have daughters. Like, the world is not safe for them right now.
Where are you seeing these videos? Is this TikTok, YouTube? Instagram. Yeah, because I think that, and let me just follow up on that trend. I'm playing on the show now, sometimes 2-3 minute rants from, I have no idea who this person is, but I loved what this person is saying. What does the flattening of access to a platform to broadcast your opinions do specifically on this issue? Because we could talk about the bad things. Anybody can say anything anywhere and go viral. But on this issue, when you cite those people, you're saying, I'm seeing people. He looked like A. The point being, everybody's got access. And I think when you see, in this case, older white men, guys who look like me, look like they might have climbed the Capitol on January 6th and you don't want to let your kid around, look like me, saying things that you agree with, it's important because other guys that look like me are like, that guy thinks it. And I think that's
right. There's a dude whose account I follow. I think he used to be in a hate group and he has reformed, and he's become an expert on Black history. Like, he's super jazzed about all the stuff he's learning about Black history. Yeah. Like, I love his videos. And I will say one thing more, that those are much more powerful than the posts on LinkedIn or Facebook, or I'm on Blue Sky. That seems to be where a lot of people are moving now that Twitter is a vehicle for Nazis. But
well, that vehicle, though,
thumbs down on Nazis.
That Nazi vehicle, though, now can come back and land after it's shot up into space. So at least it can do that. It's a
We have really strong scientific evidence that it is the sound of the human voice that allows other people to recognize you as a human being. When you read someone's opinion, whether it's in a book or a newspaper, it doesn't matter. If you're reading an opinion, you are much more likely to dehumanize them. But if you hear it in their own voice, you're more likely to recognize this as a human, and they disagree with me, but they're a human. So that's one of the reasons why these videos can be more effective. Not only because, as you say, we can see who they are and we can either identify with them or see them as somebody very different, but also I don't need to say this to a podcaster. There's a power in the human voice that cannot be duplicated by any other platform.
That's weird. My listeners say there's literally no power in your voice, Pete, but we're happy to have your guests join the program. We really like Celeste today, but you really should get some power in that voice. I take your point. I think it's very accurate and matters a lot, which is why things like white men for Kamala and any other breakdown, traditionally maybe they don't support someone, a candidate of her caliber or identity. And we're all being like, yeah, we do. We absolutely do. By the way, I just want to get your take on this quote, which I love and made me think of you. Surround yourself with people who fight for you in rooms you aren't in. You host rooms. You're in a lot of rooms with people. You're a leader on this type of thinking, and it made me think of you. Surround yourself with people who fight for you in rooms you are in. What does that mean, and how do you hear that? And why is it, if you agree with it?
Because people talk differently in different circles, right?
Sure.
When we talk about code switching, we're often talking about Black and brown or LGBTQ communities, but everybody code switches. Yeah. You speak differently to your mother than you speak to your spouse, than you speak to your boss, et cetera, et cetera. And we know that, again, I'm focusing on white people because they're the people with the most power.
How dare you come on this program?
There's this great book called Two-Faced Racism, and it's based on this massive research study that white scientists did into how differently white people talk about race when they're only with other white people.
Oh, I've been there.
But it's also, because I'm so light-skinned, I'm also sometimes there until I go. But in any case,
and you have the Jewish card as well,
the Jewish
which is
also.
even more, less likely, I think, for people to think that you are that. So you must have a lot of intel. Terrible experience.
Terrible things have been said. And then they get mad at me like I've somehow tricked them into saying racist shit. But in any case, this has been replicated with how men speak about women, this locker room talk when women aren't around, how women speak about men when men aren't around, etc. So when they talk about someone who sticks up for you even when you're not there, that's what they're talking about. So let's say you're a female and this male goes into where do men gather now? At the gaming.
Right now we're doing a lot of axe throwing.
Or rage rooms. I don't know. I'm trying not to stereotype.
Chat rooms.
And what you normally would do would just go with the flow. And somebody says, oh, that bitch is crazy or whatever. And that person would just go with that to not make waves. What you're looking for is that person that goes, hang on, I know her. Can you not speak about her that way? That's what you're looking for. And frankly, that person, that man who does that is the bravest, the person with the most integrity. That's the admirable one in the room.
That's why that's why I've always tried to be, because I think about my friends who aren't in that room. But the issue is the courage does come in that am I going to ruin this friendship? Am I going to ruin this moment? It's a bunch of guys, we're hanging out, and am I going to spoil this for everybody? Oh, Dominic's got to say something, like that kind of a thing. And the truth is, I have lost some friends for being that guy. But I was thinking about that, and I was like, but I've gained way more friends from being that guy too, because I end up like getting to meet people from way diverse backgrounds than me. And as you always tell us, we should surround ourselves with those people, because I get to try a lot of new foods, Celeste. And
get
now
smarter.
I'm told
neurological research says you're smarter because of it.
A lot of Black women that listen to my show have been telling me for years now, I don't buy this, but that I should wash my legs. And I think all I'm saying is, I think I do wash my legs. The soap runs down there, but I don't they're saying I should bring an abrasive cloth or sponge to the lower leg. And I have a They're teaching me, but I'm not. Sometimes I just don't learn, I suppose.
Also, for certain demographics listening, you shouldn't be shampooing your hair every day. You don't need to shampoo your hair every day. I just need to bring this very important message to you. This doesn't apply to Pete, but don't shampoo your hair every day. I don't know who told you that you needed that.
Never seen you punch down.
Stop doing that.
I've never seen you punch down like that, but the bald heard you. The balds, you don't know our struggle. I'll let you go. Oh, just tell me how you think Kamala Harris is doing and how their campaign is doing. And specifically, I think I wanted your take on the media strategy of not doing the New York Times and CNN and sit downs like that and doing every kind of alternative, but also obviously doing Fox and 60 Minutes as well.
The Fox one, I think she held her own really well. She had said that it reminded her of her trial court experience, which makes sense to me. I'm a journalist. If I'm biased, it's against all politicians. I suspect all of them as a rule. But I will say she's handling the campaign really well. She was in Wisconsin. At one point, there was a couple hecklers that started shouting out, "You're lying. That's all lies." And she said, "You're at the wrong rally. You're supposed to be at that smaller one down the street," which I thought was brilliant. I think, frankly, her campaign strategy, whoever has put it together, avoiding the New York Times, because the New York Times political coverage is, the best I can say is that it's problematic. The worst I can say is that it's biased to help Donald Trump. I don't think it's intentional, but that's what it's doing. So frankly, avoiding these sort of traditional medias is working for her. I think she's doing well. And Donald Trump has canceled a whole bunch of appearances. He is clearly tired.
Sleepy
and
Don.
I don't just say that because
Sleepy.
of the 40-minute dance party.
That was weird.
If that had been Joe Biden, every front page the next day would be about his cognitive decline.
Well, yeah. Just on the Fox News
that was
interview,
bizarre.
We were talking last night at our hangout, which you should come to anytime you want, every Thursday night at 8. And we were talking about the Fox News interview, and a few black women were making the smart and always consistent point about black folks, much less women, having certain emotions and coming across as angry, the angry black man, the angry. And I'm always like, how are you not always angry? Like, how, if you're a person of color in America, how are you not fucking green all the time and just smashing? But that's my opinion. The point is, I was pushing back saying, of course, a lot of people are going to come away with that interpretation. But I do think that the woke among us, or that even people who don't pay close attention to politics but saw that interview, if they see her anger, it's justified because she's being interrupted in the way that he's acting and his face doesn't move. Did you notice that? But more importantly, my point was, I think a lot of people are saying she came across as strong, which is something that a lot of voters need, including women, in their president. They need a strong president who can stand up to bullies. I felt like there was a lot of strength in that interview and others that some people might think is anger. But I wonder what your takeaway was, the strength versus the anger, and how that affects voters, viewers in that interview or any other thing that she's been doing.
Yeah, let's get some harsh truths here. The majority of viewers, even those who are liberal, probably are much more likely to see her as angry. I've literally lost at least 2 jobs where they have said, me being angry is the reason why. Me. So, yeah, the reason why black and brown people aren't visibly angry all the time is because it can get you killed. In my case, it will lose you jobs. It will lose you promotions and raises in salary. It will hurt you. But in the worst case, it can get you killed. So you do everything that you can. Even if a black person gets within 12 inches of a white person, 80% of American white people will interpret that as the threat of violence.
I have such a different reaction. If a black person gets that close to me, I usually try to kiss them.
That could get you punched.
Also,
then you might see some anger.
It has. Twice. 2 times. I was just like, it's rush hour
I'm just
on the
saying
subway.
That's the truth.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's great that you see that as strength. I, too, see that as strength. But the majority of American white people also believe they are more discriminated against than black people.
I know,
so there's a lot of weirdness that goes on.
It's the most important statistic I've cited and repeat in all of my days of broadcasting. Unpacking that, I think, is super important. First, react to it, whatever your reaction is. Have that reaction when you learn it. But then let's talk about it. Let's talk about
at the next white person's meeting, can you make sure that comes up? Because you guys have some talking to do.
I am not sharing the agenda any longer. I was replaced by a piece of chalk. This is the only thing they could find that was whiter. And I'll tell you, that piece of Chuck is a real tyrant with the agenda items. Never wants to talk about the issues. I certainly do. Yeah, no, those are going back to the point, the slogan that I mentioned. Those white person meetings are where you need to stand up to and do your best. And you've taught us and me how to talk about racism. You wrote a book about it. So if people want more specific advice, because you don't want to lose friends and you don't want to ruin the moment. And I wish that Celeste was on my shoulder in many of those moments, be like, you're triggered, calm down. What you're about to do will only make things worse. But you're not there. You're never there.
Not never.
I mean, I go to your work later, but not during the moment between stimulus and response. You're not there.
I will say this. Obviously, this is partly self-serving, but the book America is going to need after November 5th, regardless of what happens, is the exact book you're talking about.
Yeah, let's revisit
and companies, I have a whole bunch of speeches right now from companies asking me to come and teach employees and their leadership how to talk about politics, because the way that we think that we do it, the debating, bringing in statistics, being logical, is what makes it worse. Regardless of whether you think it's right, regardless of what your principles are, what we're doing isn't working. And so this one book that's going to say, it's okay, I hear you. Yes, it sucks. Yes, this is painful, but let me tell you science-based, evidence-based ways to get through this in a way that actually moves the needle the right direction. That's literally
the problem.
That's literally what we need.
We need more people like you and initiatives. I know there are organizations, and everybody should hire Celeste to do this work. But the problem I have with the teaching me how to talk with people I disagree with kind of thing is we need to be at just one starting point, that you believe that this group and that group of human beings who identify this way are human. Do you think they're human? Because if you're taking someone's humanity and that we're not on the equal playing field as we're going to talk about these divisive issues. And I feel like that's something that always needs to be in the room, because people say, why can't we just disagree on politics and still be friends? Because it's not about politics to me. It's about humanity. Do you recognize that person as a human? Is that something that can be a starting point? Can we start there? Does that just inflame everything?
No, I agree, but I need everyone to remember that when you are talking to somebody in person, you're not talking to who they are on social media. Those are two different people. And that's true of you, too. I'm not who I am on social media. And the person that you're speaking to in person is, A, going to recognize your humanity, and you're going to recognize theirs. And the other thing is that you have to keep these things to as micro level as possible. Don't talk about people. Talk about you. And this is one of the things I walk through in the book, is a conversation I actually had with this man who was saying, oh, the crime is so bad in these majority Black cities or whatever. And I was like, oh, have you experienced, when were you the victim of a crime? And he was like, I haven't. And I was like, okay, when did you live in that city? And he said, I haven't. I said, I'm confused because this is what the evidence said. So tell me, where are you getting this? It seems you have to bring it down to somebody's person, not they're taking our jobs. Did you lose your job? You. Let's just talk about you and me. And when you do it that way, not only does it humanize both of you, but it prevents people from repeating these talking points, which are ridiculous. They're usually untrue, and they're just designed to anger people and outrage them, because that's what drives people to the polls.
Oh, you're the best. I can hear the applause and the gratefulness for people who have listened to this conversation. They always love you. And I guess the best place to find you now is Blue Sky. That should be motivation to go get on that platform just to connect with. And thanks, Celeste, for joining us, because she is always one of the best. She's one of the highest rated guests here. Big crowds. We love you and we appreciate you. I always learn so much. Thank you for being here again, as always.
Thanks for always being willing to talk to me, Pete. I appreciate it.
All right, there you go. Celeste Headlee, everybody. Isn't she great? Go support her. Go get her books. Let her know that you heard her here on the show. Love, love, love that conversation. And we had some great laughs. And I cannot do any of this without your support. Thank you so much. Go write a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Looks like I'll have Professor Dr. Chrissy Greer as my guest, and having hoping to make up for the sausage party that I hosted last week here on the show and get as many great female guests as I can, voices here on the show. Many of you suggested several during last week. I appreciate that. Keep those coming, especially if I've not heard of them. Some smart woman that you know, listen to, or have heard anywhere else or in your life, or maybe it's you. standupwithpete@gmail.com. All right, let's do it. John Carroll, take it away, brother.
Keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand